Thank you very much, Norm, for inviting me here. It's a great pleasure to introduce Leo Bruno and the launch of your fabulous new book, Darwin. My job today is to introduce Leo Bruno, who is here to launch Norm's new book. So where do I start? Leo is quite an amazing person, and a speaker with the fondest stories which I hope he shares with us today. Leo began his career at General Motors Corporation as an automotive design specialist in February 1961. I've got to read these notes because I can't remember it all. He did this after receiving a Bachelor of Arts degree with honors in transportation design from the Art Center College of Design in Los Angeles, California. Can you all hear me, by the way? All okay? One of his early projects while at General Motors in Detroit was assisting the famed designer Ron Hill in the styling of his masterpiece, the 1965 Chevrolet Corvair. I'm sure some of you remember that marvelous model. But not long after, Leo was assigned to Vauxhall Motors, the General Motors subsidiary in Great Britain. And he had a significant design input to the Vauxhall Viva, which was the origin of the Holden Torana. But in June 1969, Leo joined Holden as Assistant Director of Design, and he soon became a very popular guy with both engineering and design, and became known as the Silver Fox because of his hair, colour of his hair, and his immaculate dress sense, which he still has today. Good on you, Leo. In 1975, Leo was appointed the Director of Design at Holden, and he was responsible in the 1970s and 80s for a number of the very lovely models which have been admired around the world. His reputation is well known in the industry, and he's been variously described as Leo Bruno, GM's design guru, the renowned Holden Chief of Design, or the legendary American designer, Leo Bruno. I have known and been a fan of Leo Bruno ever since he joined, and Leo very quickly became involved with the engineering side of the business because he wanted to know all about the roads in Australia, our famed outback conditions, and his cars once he designed, had to perform in those areas. I happened to be the ride and handling development engineer at the time, and one of my jobs was to organise test trips to the outback, take our test cars out there and try to beat the heck out of them. But one of Leo's favourite roads was the Port Augusta to Cooperative Road. In those days it was unsealed, lots of bull dust patches, enormous potholes, rocks, you name it, it had everything. And it was about a 12-hour journey from Port Augusta to Cooperative. And when we got to Cooperative, usually after dark, there was only one place in town we could fill the cars, and that was the Ampol Roadhouse. I don't know whether everyone knows still remembers Ampol, but that was the only place in town. And after we filled the cars and checked the tyres and put them to bed, we looked for something to eat. And the only place in town that was open at that hour, usually about 9 o'clock, was the Ampol Roadhouse, run by a Greek family, who would make some moussaka for us, pour us a cold beer, and open up a bottle of red for us. But I remember very acutely the number of hours that Leo and I spent in that place, at the finish of which we'd end up linking arms and dancing to Zorba the Greek type music till the wee hours of the night. I hope you remember that, Leo. I certainly do. Anyway, Leo is remembered and revered as a brilliant designer of great-looking cars who contributed so much to the rich history of automotive design and engineering in Australia. He was an innovator who did not hesitate to make bold design statements. And he also had a keen sense of recruiting and nurturing talented designers who have continued his extraordinary legacy at Holden. Names such as Phil Smoot, who's in the audience here, Peter Nankervis, Michael Simcoe, and Richard Filazzo, some names come to mind. Brilliant designers worldwide. in their reputation. We should be privileged that Leo Pruno chose to make Australia his home when he retired. He married a lovely Australian lass, and he lives not too far from here. And I'm personally saddened that I no longer hear his favourite expression when he used to conduct design reviews in front of the board of directors and engineering and so forth, and he'd say, in exasperation after a while, "God damn it, you guys!" I think he still uses that expression. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I've said enough. I'd like to introduce Leo Pruno to launch Sinorm's book.
Thanks, Hugh. That's too many kind words. Just let me, before I go too far, the Ampol Roadhouse that he was talking about, that was the damnedest place you ever saw in your life. It was a long concrete building, there was a fire in the back, you walked in and you threw your steak on the fire and cooked it yourself. The characters that used to come in, they'd come in and they'd put their guns by the front door and get their steak. But anyway, it was a fantastic time. Anyway, thanks again, Hugh, and thanks to Norm for inviting me over to come over and say a few words. I'm going to try to remember a few stories, but you know, at my age, I can hardly remember what I had for breakfast, let alone what happened 40 years ago, for Christ's sake. So anyway, we'll try to do a few memories if we can. And as Hugh said, we actually got started in England with the HB Viva. And that was just a quick job we did, and it turned out to be a very, very successful car in England. So that was really the beginning of the Tirana. The car was, we only had two body styles over there. They were called Vivas. And two body styles, a two-door and a two-door station wagon, which they called an estate. And within the first year that the car was launched, it went from 11th place in the market of its segment up to about, I think, 16%. So that was a phenomenal rise, and whoops, that's my notes leading down that day. It was a phenomenal success. And, so after a while, the car was in production, and one day the director of sales comes in, the engineer, and says, "Leo, can we make a four-door sedan out of this?" And I said, "Well, yeah, of course, no problem." But then the chief engineer was with him. And before I could say yes, he said, "Okay, Leo, but we got to save the windshield, the roof panel, the backlight, and the deck lid." So there wasn't much room to move to make a four-door car out of the two-door Viva. But anyway, I took my fiberglass model, cut the side of it out, made a four-door out of it. I also did a seating buck, one side of the seating buck, to make sure that it could demonstrate how much room we'd have left. And I tell you, there wasn't a lot. I mean, we even had to cut the corner of the seat off so you could get your foot in between the seat and the door pillar. Anyway, I showed it to the sales guys and engineering, and they said, "Well, we think we can sell them." So, okay. After that, the normal procedure was just to release the drawings to Vauxhall Engineering, and then they would go ahead and make the production parts, or make the drawings and so on and so forth. Anyway, after a while, releasing the drawings, all of a sudden, a few months later, here's these little four-door Vivas coming out of the factory. And I never thought a thing about it. So it turns out that those drawings that I gave to Vauxhall Engineering, they just took them in one hand and out with the other hand, Holden. And Holden did all the engineering for the four-door Viva down here. They made the tooling down here and then sent the panels back to Vauxhall to be assembled as four-door cars, because they used the four-door here as a Tirana as well. So, you know, I never knew that story until I'm working with Norm on the bloody book in the very beginning. It was just absolutely, I thought that was all Vauxhall stuff, but hell, it was all Holden stuff. Anyway, about 1969, I get a tap on the shoulder and say, "Well, look, would you like to go down to Australia?" And oh yeah, be a nice place. Didn't know much about Australia in those days, and I guess I kind of thought that, well, it's English, but it's kind of American, but so it's going to be about halfway between Kansas City and London. I thought that would be Australia. Well, shit, it's more like Kansas City. Anyway, I get down here, and Phil Spoon and the guys had already finished up the first major facelift on the Tirana. That was the LC, and that car was a drastic change from the Viva, because it put the six-cylinder engine in it. It made the four doors in it as well, and it was quite a different car. But I think, it was just about the first day, Phil said to me, he said, Leo, would you like to see our new sport model? It's just one of the pilot models off the line, and it was a GTR. So I think it was over in the service garage, and Phil woke me over there in the red one. I remember it like it was yesterday. And honestly, it was just I was really taken aback with the car. So anyway, I thought, well, that's that sort of thing, and everything looks pretty good. So we were really busy doing the Monaros when I first got here, and they're just finishing them up because they were about 90% done anyway. But there was some work on the commercials and what have you. Anyway, after a short while, Bill Steinhagen, who was the chief engineer at the time, he comes into Joe Shemansky's office and announces to Joe that they're going to stop racing the big Monaros at Bathurst, and we're going to try souping up the little Tirana with the six-cylinder engine and see if we can't make that work. Now, it's going to be a new model, and sales want some different styling on it. So Steinhagen says to Joe, he said, Joe, we'll put something together. So Joe turns to me and says, Leo, go put something together. And I had the model there, the regular GTR. So I put a few things on it, and some black paint and a few things like that. And when I got it all done, I asked Steinhagen to come down and have a look, because Joe, he said, you just do it, Leo. He wasn't interested. So anyway, Steinhagen comes down, and by the time he gets done with it, taking pieces off, because he couldn't do this because there wasn't enough time, or that was going to cost too much money, or too much bullshit. That's really what it amounted to. In any event, all that got left on the XU1 was the bloody spoiler and a few little back paint out. Anyway, we finish up the story. That I didn't know exactly what I was going to call it, because in those days it was quite common for the advertising agency account executive to come down and see what the new models were going to look like, because they had to do the brochures and everything. So anyway, Peter Lewis Williams was the guy, and he said, I gave him the whole pitch on the car, because I took all the stuff off that I didn't sell. It was going to be exactly as it was going to be produced. So he had a look at it, and he understood it all. And he said, well, Leo, what are you going to call it? And I said, well, we don't have a name for it yet. It's just, all we're referring to it is the engineering option code number, which was XU1. And I said that, and he said, well, why don't you call it that? Brilliant. And that's exactly what we did. I went back and I made a real rough sketch, gave it to the guys to clean up. We had to hyphenate there, put a dash in the one so it matched up with the GTR badge above it, and it got put in production. And that damn, car companies pay thousands and thousands of dollars for companies to come up with names and designators like that these days. And we got it for nothing. It was just engineering code number. Anyway, the other thing that was part of it, sales wanted a few new colors. And to kind of set the car apart, because we lost almost everything on the styling side, but we could always get a few colors. So the guys, we talked it over with Ken Paletta there in the interior studio, and we thought, well, look, they're going to be basically race cars. Why not try use really bright colors, not subtle metallic colors and things like that you put on the Kingswood. So do them in bright colors. Anyway, we did. And of course, to even set them off a bit, we added a little fancy name to them. So the yellow color became Yellow Dolly, and the orange one became the Lone Oranger, and the light green one became Let Us Alone, and the dark green one became March the 17th, and the purple one became Plumdinger. And and we had just went on and on and on with these damn names, but we only had about 6 or 8 colors, I guess. And one of the colors that didn't get picked for the car was on this little Tirana sitting out front. You notice the bright pink color or lilac color on the tailpiece. And that particular color was one that say it wasn't picked, but we had a name for it. And the guys were sitting around in the studio there making up these names sort of thing. And Bob Muller, who was nicknamed Barney, he was just a kind of a little clerk in the styling area. He happened to walk in, and he had a shirt on that color. And somebody said, well, that's Barney's shirt. And that became the name of the color. It never got into production. The color was out there on Larry Kavanaugh's car. So anyway, after we finished up with the GTRX, not GTRX, the XU1s, the next cab off the rank was the LJ series. Now, that was a pretty minor facelift. Phil had made some sketches on the front, I know, it looked pretty good. And there were just minor changes. But in the course of the LJ series, the big news was, of course, and most controversial, was the V8 Torontos that we were going to race at Bathurst. Now, that story's been written a million times. Norm does a terrific job in the book and gives you all the details. But I'll just tell you my 2 cents worth, whatever that's worth. Because the cars were being built for Bathurst, they were being done down in the engineering running shop, you. And there were 3 of them, 3 cars. And this was a small room that just had a side door. You could had a big door in front, but they could get the cars in. But then once the cars were in, they closed it off, so no too many spectators. Because a lot of people knew they were being built, I think. Anyway, I had enough privilege. I could go in there and look once in a while. And very interesting. So I keep going in there, and then one morning I went in I was down in engineering for some reason or other, and I thought I'll just pop in and have a look and see what's going on, because they were just about finished. So the guys went in there, and Christ, it was, there were 3 cars. There was a pink one, khaki pink, an orange one, an oranger, and I thought a dark green one, but Norm says it was white, so I guess I got to take Norm's word for it. It was a white one, I guess. Okay. So anyway, listen, by the way, any stories that I tell, there's plenty of guys here in the crowd that can correct me. So, anyway, we'd go in there and have a look at the cars, and I'll tell you, it was absolutely bedlam in there. They were just on the very last day or so before they were finished. 3 cars, there were mechanics, fitting pieces, there were parts all over the place. There were engineers in there. There were draftsmen were drawing up the pieces as they were fitting them almost, because we had to make, 250 or 500, I forget what the number was, production cars. And those were really the prototypes, And so it was a prototype and a mule and everything else all in one. So anyway, I go on upstairs, and then about 11 o'clock we hear this story that Bill Gibbs, who was the managing director at the time, and Bill was a really straight-laced guy, never made any waves whatsoever, did everything by the book. And anyway, the Minister of Transport reads this article in one of the Sydney papers that Evan Green wrote, talking about these bullet cars that Holden are building, because there were 500 road cars that we had to build. And they were pretty high-performance cars. But anyway, Bill Gibbs gets an ass chewing from the Minister of Transport, and he don't take very kindly to that. So he then calls Steinhagen, the chief engineer, and anyway, the buzz at the lunch table was about this damn phone call from the Minister of Transport to Gibbs, and if they were going to stop the V8 program. So I thought, I'll just go back on the way back from lunch and have a look and see what's going to happen here. And I walked in that little side door, and I swear to God, it's like everything vaporized. There was absolutely nothing in that room. No cars, no parts, no people, no drawings, nothing. Asked the guys, where's the cars? Nobody knew anything. It's like they never, ever existed. And it wasn't until, several years later, because I kept wanting to know what happened to the bloody cars. And I think we found out later they went down to the safety center down at the proving ground.
One was stolen.
One of them got stolen. Joe Felice's company car got stolen, but it had a 6-cylinder engine put back in it. And it just turns out that Joe and I were after work having a beer, I think, at one of the taverns. And he was driving that orange middle car, and it had the V8 in it. And we come out after having a beer, and shit, it's been stolen. Gone. I think they finally found it, Joe. I don't know. They did.
This engine gave it. They thought it had a race engine.
Yeah, no. Anyway, so that it was one of the most remarkable things in my whole career with General Motors, how engineering got rid of those cars and all the evidence, just in a matter of about 2 hours. It was just remarkable. Vaporized. And that was the last you ever heard of the V8 LJ Toronto, I can tell you. So anyway, just moving on, I guess the big program on the Torontos was the LX series. And I remember when we were getting ready to start that program, that was going to be a clean piece of paper, all new, and it was going to be an entirely Australian enterprise. It was going to be designed, engineered, tested, and manufactured in Australia by Australians. Nobody else involved. Now, Holden had the people, they had the talent, had everything we needed, and the enthusiasm to do the job. So Styling had the responsibility for trying to improve whatever we could on the body side, and engineering, of course, had all the drivetrain and engines and stuff. Now, it was designed, or it was stated in the program, that we were going to design it for both right-hand and left-hand drive, and it was be designed by the engineers to accommodate 3 engines right from the very beginning, engine and drivetrain. So it was a 4-cylinder, a 6-cylinder, and a V8. Now, a lot of cars through the years have had cars upgraded by putting bigger engines in them. But the Tirana, as far as I know, was the only car that's ever been designed with 3 engines, different types of engines, from the very beginning. And that was quite a coup. So anyway, we got the packaging all done, and remember Steinhagen was getting ready to go to the States to make the presentation because we had to sell it get the holy water sprinkled on it back in Detroit. And so we had to make a presentation to build. And what we did, the main thing that we did with the body was to push the rear seat back and the rear axle back without making the car any longer, because we wanted the rear compartment passenger room. And to do that, you had to push both the seat and the axle back. So anyway, the wheelbase then on the Tirana went from 98 on the HB, I think up to about 104 on our package. And we had a seating buck which we made so we could demonstrate the room. So Steinhagen comes down and we make the pitch to him, and he's very enthusiastic and extremely complimentary on the work we had done to get make a nice little car out, because the car didn't get any bigger, it just got a hell of a lot more room inside. And after he looked at it for about 20-30 minutes, sitting in the seating buck and everything, and he says, listen, you guys, this is a fantastic effort, but I've got a problem. And what's the problem? He said, I can't sell the 104-inch wheelbase in Detroit. They have a mentality back there. A certain size wheelbase means a certain size car. And they couldn't understand how we could make the wheelbase longer without making the car any bigger. So he said, look, we'll have to compromise that, squeeze it back down a bit, which I think took about 3 inches back out of it. So we made it 101 wheelbase. That was still 3 inches better than the HB. And it was better, but it wasn't really as good as it could have been. So after Steinhagen gets all the drawings and data and everything, goes back to Detroit, and he returns and sells the program. So now in the meantime, we were doing a lot of sketching in Phil's area there, and a lot of guys were working on it. And so we knew when he got back, if the program was approved, we could get on with the clay model fairly quickly, which we did. And that was pretty easy to do that, because we already knew what the car looked like. It was just a question of proving it out in full-size clay model. But the interior was something of a different story altogether, because it was going to be right and left-hand drive. And of course, the problem you always have with designing right and left-hand drive cars, you almost got to do 2 interiors, a right-hand drive and a left-hand drive, because they're asymmetrical. Well, in this case, we had to be as clever as possible and make the crash pad so it was only one crash pad. It was the same one for both right and left-hand drive. The glove box took the same size and place as the instruments. The center part stayed the same. The part underneath where the steering wheel goes through the instrument panel, that was a loose piece, and that was interchangeable with on the. So in other words, we wound up making a right and left-hand drive without tooling but one set of parts. Now the panel could have probably been a little better looking, but the bean counters were happy and Steinhagen was happy, and so got a nice big pat on the back. The irony was, after we had all this work, when they decided to tool the bloody thing, the left-hand drive had gone out of the program, so they tooled it up with a minimum number of pieces, but it lost the interchangeability, and we could have had that very, very easily. So anyway, after we finished the clay model, the next thing, the next step in the series of things to make a new car was to make a fiberglass model. So you take the clay model and you pour plaster all over it, and you make a cast of it, and then you lay fiberglass up inside, and you make a model. It's actually 1-to-1, exactly the same as the clay. And those models are, they're all hand built, and the only parts that you can use from a production car are the tires and the windshield wiper blades. Everything else is handmade. They cost somewhere, in those days, close to $750,000 to make one of those models. So we did that, but then the other side of the coin was that we had to, in those days, when an overseas division, Vauxhall or Opel or Holden, did their own new car, they had to send it back to Detroit, again, to get the holy water sprinkled on it, to make sure that it was okay. So, and then after that, they would be used in the annual Board of Directors product review. So the problem with sending back one of these models, they were always built around heavy sort of frames, and the fiberglass panels were just hung off of them. And the trip to America was a pretty arduous one for Australia. Because first of all, after you got the car ready, put it in a special box, tie everything down, and then it goes by road transport out to Tullamarine or Essendon, wherever the case may be at the time, and then gets on an airplane and flies to LA. And that part all goes pretty easy. But when it gets to LA, they put the bloody thing on the train, and it goes 2,500 miles to Detroit. And it's bang, 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 bang in the rail cars. And by the time you open the box in Detroit, everything's on the floor. Just shit. They always had to send paint and parts and all that, and it was just a disaster. So what we decided to do, we thought we'd do a monocoque body, so a stress skin model. Now, without going into the details, it was the first and only time that I know that a monocoque styling model was made. But it was half the weight, it was strong, and we sent it over there without any damage, and it came back without any damage. So it was really a good job. So having got everything set in place, the Toronto was a go program. The 4-door sedan was going to come first, and then we would do the two-door coupe. And Phil was again working on that, and we just about got the thing 100% finished, and we were really quite satisfied because again it was just easy to do. But shortly after we got the model finished, I got a tap on the shoulder and said, "Leo, you've got to come back to Detroit. You've been here about 5 years now, so you've got to come back for reorientation." More bullshit. So anyway, I go back. I thought I was only going to be gone a fairly short time, but it turned out I was gone almost a year, I think, maybe even a bit more. And also my boss, Joe Szymanski, he was going to retire, and there was maybe some chance that I might get the job, but it certainly wasn't guaranteed. So anyway, I go back to Detroit, and while I'm in Detroit, there's a drastic change to the Toronto program. The two-door coach, or two-door coupe that we had designed, somebody decided that it should be turned into a hatchback. And everything was all done on the car, and because hatchbacks were just coming in, it had to be turned in, they thought, sales thought that was going to be the crash hot body style, and it would be the first one from the manufacturer here in Australia. So we did that, and it never changed the appearance very much. Between the back window and the deck lid, the angle wasn't quite as acute because it couldn't press it quite as deep as that. But it was all right. And I got back, finally finished up in Detroit, and got back just in time to do the launch for the new Toronto. And I think the top model was an SS, and I think we did the launch over in South Australia at the Seaview Winery. It was quite a good launch, actually. And all the journals and everybody got pissed afterwards. So and the Sheilas were all over the place, and it got bad news. And anyway, after they finished with the two-door, or turned into a hatchback, that was going to be the racing car now. And so the old L34 was getting a bit long in the tooth, and Holden engine engineers have been working on some refinements for the V8. So they thought they'll do another upgrade, more a performance package. And again, we were asked to do some bits and pieces for it, and we sold some. A lot of them didn't get sold. But in any event, it came time to do the name for that car again, and we did just like we did with the XU1. I waited till the very last minute, went up to Jack Criddle's office and found out what the option number was, A9X. And that damn A9X has become a part of the Australian language almost, Everybody knows what A9X is. So, as I say, the Toronto everybody thought that the car looked the part, and it was the part. And nobody, absolutely nobody had any idea it was going to turn out to be the ball buster that it did. It was just, you couldn't beat it on the road or on the track. And the irony of the whole thing is, right at the peak, there was one Bathurst with it, and along comes the goddamn Commodore. And it absolutely, because it's the new boy on the block, it gets the nod from the management that that's going to be the race car. So the Tirana carries on with the UCs and the Sunbirds, but the V8's been dropped out of it, and also all the enthusiasm's going out of the Tirana now. It's all bloody Commodore. So the Tirana was really fading and fading fast, and soon it was going to be gone. But in the beginning, as I said, it was a clean piece of paper. And there was a lot of enthusiasm, and it was a good concept, and there was certainly room for a lot more body styles than what we had just besides a two-door hatchback and a four-door sedan. So just to run through some of the models that, that just got doodled on different sketch pads and maybe full-size tape drawings or something. But we thought that the first cab off the rank should be a station wagon, a four-door station wagon. And that was a logical next body style to do. But if we'd have got the station wagon, then more than likely we would have made a ute. And if we'd have got the ute, we'd have probably done a high panel van, a high roof van. And, that was just sort of what Holden was known for. So, but there were other body styles that we thought about too. I always wanted to do a 2+2 chop top club coupe, or a Victoria coupe as some people call them. That would have been, really good. There was a possibility that we could have done a sports station wagon, again with a chop top, much like the Chevy Nomads were of the 50s. Totally different than the four-door. The four-door would have been, station wagon would have been the utility job, and the sport job could have been the new Nomad. But there were even things like, we thought about stretching the wheelbase back to the 104 inches, which we had initially wanted, and which would give it a very nice rear seat, and put a new 6-window caramel upper on it, and kind of made a baby statesman out of it. Under the V8, that would have been an executive sedan, very, very good. Even I remember making a short wheelbase, 2-passenger roadster with chop top on it. But none of those things, they were just ideas, a few tape drawings, and some of them were nothing more than just kitchen table ideas, just, in the ether. None of them ever got made into clay models. We never had the chance. Because unfortunately, the Tirana got outmaneuvered. There were other people, other agendas about. So the Tirana really never was allowed to reach its full potential. So eventually, it would just absolutely be gone. And when it goes, it would be the last Australian cars from Holden. So I declare the Tirana dead. Long live the Tirana. So thank you very much. And
Alas, Holden vehicle.